And welcome to the NFC West Huddle, a.k.a. the Kyle Kraska Gloating Show edition, as we head into the final week of the regular season with the Rams already locking up the division title. I'm Aaron Levine in Seattle, joined by Bailey O'Carroll in San Francisco, Richard Sines in Phoenix, and the aforementioned Kyle Kraska in L.A. You know, this week is pretty meaningless for all the teams in the division, although the teams themselves won't say it. So instead, we're going to focus on things that actually matter. And the first topic this week is, how far will the Rams go in the playoffs and why? Kyle, to the victor go the spoils. You lead us off tonight.
Well, Aaron, thanks. And I find it very appropriate you're wearing black tonight because, of course, you're mourning another lost season for the Seahawks, as are all of the other host on the show today. You know, it's going to be challenging to predict accurately how far the Rams can go because we don't know a whole lot right now, do we? We don't know who they're going to play in the playoffs. We only know they're going to host a game against either the Packers or the Commanders or the Lions or the Vikings. So I'll tell you what I will predict is this. Looking ahead to this weekend, I'm going to assume Seattle finds a way to win in Week 18 because, first of all, the Rams aren't going to play anybody. And number two, Gino has an awful lot of incentive, doesn't he? He can make $4 million in incentives if he just goes out and plays well. And if Seattle wins the game, he'll win another $2 million. So there's $6 million on the line for Geno Smith. I'm going to assume Seattle wins this weekend and the Rams fall to the number 4 slot. And that's where I'm going to make my big hot take here. I think the Lions have won their last game already this season. I think the Vikings go there this weekend and win. I think the Lions fall to the wild card spot in the number 5 slot. I think they come to L.A. here and then they get beat by the Rams. So I think the Rams are going to win their first playoff game. Not sure they can get past Philadelphia, but I do like the Rams at least winning one game. And as I said, I think the Lions have won their last game already.
Wow. Okay, Bailey, the Niners were the division favorites this year. It did not go their way, but how do you think the Rams are going to do in the playoffs?
I don't know if I have a take as hot as the Lions not winning a playoff game. I know they didn't look too good against the Niners, but I'll say it's a very impressive roster, and they have really put on a show all season long with Dan Campbell hyping you up before the game and at halftime. I'm not sure how you don't win a playoff game, but I guess crazier things have happened. I like the Rams' experience, specifically Matthew Stafford. We know he's been in the league seemingly forever. So I do think that experience will edge them out when you look at some of the other teams. You know, the Vikings have Sam Darnold. You look at Goff has some experience, but Jaden Daniels obviously not super experienced. So I do think that will play a role. We know that always kind of plays a role in playoff football. And so I think that will work to the Rams' advantage. But I think that they can't have a one-dimensional offense. I think they need to have Puka Nacua come up big, but they also need to have Cooper Kupp come up big. And that's something that hasn't happened. Cooper Kupp hasn't done a whole lot in the last few weeks. So I think to make it a deep run in this playoffs, I think they need to have those offensive weapons hot and ready to go. But yeah, it was a disappointing season for the Niners. I think the team in the locker room has kind of already flipped the page to next season. I know they still have a tough game, let's see, on Sunday against Arizona, but like you said, it's basically meaningless. So the Niners have basically turned the page to next season.
And we will talk about next season in just a bit. I will go next on this question. Let me first start by congratulating the Rams for winning the West, because that is what they did. They earned it. They won their last 5 games, 6 of their last 7. They beat the Buffalo Bills. The other 4 games in this winning streak weren't exactly pretty, but in the end, they got the job done. The Seahawks had their chances all season long, should have beat the Giants, killed themselves against the Rams in Seattle with that red zone interception, and should have had the Vikings game also. All that being said, the Rams incredibly lucky that they are most likely, well, I shouldn't say most likely, they're potentially drawing the weakest team in the NFC playoffs in the first round if they end up facing the Commanders. And they get them at SoFi, whoever it is. I think the Rams do, though, win that first game at home in the divisional, and then get to the divisional round, and that's where it ends. If you go to Philadelphia to face the Eagles, we all know how that ends. They lost to Philly by 17 points in L.A. in late November. And if they host the Vikings, well, the Vikings beat the Rams by 10 in L.A. this season. I don't think the rematch would be any different again if they played the Vikings again. So I will say congratulations to the Rams for a divisional championship in the NFC West. I understand the idea of any given Sunday, but when it comes to the Rams, the likelihood is that they're either one and done or they're going to be ousted in the divisional round in the playoffs. And Richard, none of us in Seattle have recovered from that big doink off of Trey McBride's head last week with the game-ending interception. How will the Rams do in the playoffs, though?
Yeah, I felt that doink on my head, especially when you consider the Cardinals had it, right? They had the division, and next thing you know, they go to the bye week, and it's bye-bye playoffs. But before I even get started, I got to give Kyle his credit. Congratulations. And I like what Kyle giving us the little tidbit here about, Geno Smith being able to get that bonus. Aaron, I know I've been giving you and Geno a hard time saying he's not that guy, but if he gets the bonus, I'm going to put it in my diary right here. I'm going to say, Geno, I'm sorry, I never doubted you, and can I get a loan? Because, that's a big-time bucks for him right there. So we'll put that in the diary, that's for sure. But, yeah, I kind of agree with you, Aaron, where if they get a home game and they get a rookie quarterback and Jayden Daniels and the Commanders, I think they can win that game, especially at home. But after that, they'll be one and done, that's for sure, because, Philadelphia's tough. And the Lions, I don't know about them not winning another game. As a matter of fact, I went to San Francisco for that Monday night game just for fun. That's when you know you love your job, right? When you're going to watch games on your days off. And I tell you, the Bailey O'Carroll fans I saw there in San Francisco, I mean, it was Bailey O'Carroll and Jared Goff. They were the ones that everybody was cheering for those people. So that was really cool to see. But I think the Lions have issues on defense, but I think that their offense will make up for it. But when it comes to the Rams, I think they could win that first game. But then when they get to that another level, right, of talent, that's where they have some trouble.
Well, we will see what happens there. Up next, the regular season doesn't need to be over for us to look ahead to next season. So let's go with our early projections for next year. Will your team finish with more or less wins than this season, and why? Bailey, you lead us off this time. Just 6 wins for the Niners, maybe 7 if they beat the Cardinals this week. Are you going to go higher or lower next season, and why?
I'm going higher, without a doubt. I think, obviously, the Niners coming in last place in the NFC West. They're going to get a little bit of an easier schedule, and I think that is going to play to their advantage. I think a big part of the reason why the Niners kind of had the type of season that they did was all of the injuries. And knock on wood, there's some wood right next to me, knock on wood. I don't think that you can have that many injuries to that many star guys a second year in a row. So I think that when they get these guys back and healthy and they have a little bit of an easier schedule, I think they have to win more games. If they don't, I think that's when we have a bigger discussion of, is Kyle Shanahan, is John Lynch on the hot seat? I just don't see them losing more games next year than they did this year, given that their schedule will ease up a little bit and that they'll have so many guys back and healthy.
Richard, you're next. The Cardinals with 7 or 8 wins this year. You can go higher or lower next season.
It's funny because the Cardinals are right where I predicted them to be this year. Right? I said they're going to win 7 or 8 before the season started. I actually thought the 49ers were going to win the division. And then, they go 6-4. And then I start thinking, well, hey, maybe they could get 10 wins and win the division or here. But, it's just like The Godfather, right? Once I'm out and I say I'm out with the Cardinals, they suck me back in, right? Then I get back in, then they break my heart again. I'm like, you see, this is why I didn't want to go all in on you guys to begin with. So I even wrote it in my diary that they were going to win, the division after I had wrote it in my diary that they were not going to win the division. So it's been up and down, but they're on the right track, right? With Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort as the GM. They've got good draft picks. They've gotten better each year, so I expect them to take the next step next year. And like Bailey said, knock on wood. I've been known to be hard-headed, so I'll knock on wood right here and say they're not going to blow it next year when they have a golden opportunity like they did this year.
Sucking you in, just like Mariners fans up here, the equivalent to Cardinals fans when it comes to the NFL. I'll go next. I think this is an easy question, whether the Hawks finish with 9 or 10 wins after this week, and I think it's actually 10 because the Rams are playing all their backups in a meaningless game. I still think the Seahawks win more than 10 games next season. They are clearly trending up. This was a fantastic foundational year for Mike Macdonald in his first season as head coach. The defense is no longer a laughingstock in the division. It can finally handle the Kyle Shanahans and Sean McVays when it comes to defending those offensive attacks. The defense is only going to get better. I think they will be a borderline top 5 defense next year. And I think, believe it or not, they stick with Geno Smith for another season, finally investing in their offensive line and getting a new offensive coordinator who shares a run-first philosophy with Mike Macdonald. You finally have an offense that can mirror the improvement on the defensive side of the ball. And then, have you seen the Hawks schedule next year? This goes for all the division, but the Seahawks play the Titans, Jaguars, Panthers, Colts, and Saints. You're halfway to 10 wins right there. They're 6-1 on the road this season. Going 3-6 at home this year was an anomaly. So if they go a mediocre, 5-3 at home next year, I think 6 more wins in 9 road games is very doable given their opponents. So I will be expecting 12 wins from the Hawks next season, with the floor being 11 wins. Kyle, the Rams will likely finish with 10 wins, so you can go higher or lower next year.
Whether it's 10 or 11 wins for the Rams, I'm going to actually go lower next year. In some regards, it's a loaded question because we simply don't know what the future is for Matthew Stafford. The Rams and Matthew went all in this year on his contract, making over $40 million, and they thought, well, we'll get through the season, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll make a decision on their quarterback of the future. Remember, Jimmy Garoppolo is the backup here. He's the guy that's going to be starting Sunday against the Seahawks. So it really depends on what happens with Matthew Stafford. But bottom line, guys, I mean, y'all stunk this year. You're all going to be better. You've all predicted that your teams are going to be better next year. So just in the division alone, I think the Rams will struggle to win more games. I mean, if they win the game on Sunday, they'd be 5-1 in the division this year. So I say the Rams will still be a real good football team. They'll be better on defense. Kyren Williams is fantastic. They've got too many great weapons not to be a winning football team. But I think to be able to match 11 wins when your quarterback is going to be in question and you're going to play against a divisional schedule that's certainly going to be much better than it was this year, I'll say the Rams maybe take a step back. But that doesn't mean I don't think they'll be a playoff team again next year.
It should be a very interesting division, how that stacks up next season as well. Next up, who is your team MVP for 2024 and why? Richard, you lead us off this time. At midseason, most of us said Kyler Murray was the MVP of the division. Does he finish the season as the MVP of his own team, or is it someone else?
No, he does not. And before I even tell you who it is, I just want to say, I hope throughout my life I can find somebody that loves me half as much as you love Geno Smith, because that's a true bromance right there. I mean, you're still going all in on this guy for next year. That is amazing to me. I can't believe it.
That's the
that
problem.
Is awesome.
There is no alternative.
That is a great. I mean, that's a bromance for the ages. I'll tell you that. And speaking of bromance, are we going to have to see Kyle do his best Jimmy GQ when the Rams win one playoff game and have his Freddie Freeman jersey and his sunglasses like he had when the Dodgers won? I'm like, well, we got to deal with this LA arrogance again.
Don't forget the Galaxy.
That's
Don't
what's
forget
crazy.
the Galaxy,
Anyway,
Richard.
Yeah, the Galaxy succeed. All you guys do is win out there, right? Well, but my MVP for the Arizona Cardinals is the guy that got my fantasy football team, the Chimichangas, to the Super Bowl, and that's James Conner, who is absolutely fantastic until the Super Bowl when he got hurt right before and couldn't play. It cost the Chimichangas the Super Bowl. James Conner has been fantastic. He's a guy that leads on and off the field. He's a leader in that locker room. He does everything the right way, and that's why they extended his contract. So you got to tip your cap to James Conner. That guy, even he didn't have to play in that last game, and he still wanted to start the game and kind of set the tone. And those are the kind of guys you need. I guess kind of like I love James Conner almost as much as you love Geno Smith, Aaron, but not that much. I'm still working my way up to that level of love.
I get it. Again, I just can't come up with any alternative, and the quarterbacks in the draft this year aren't exactly the best, and the Seahawks draft spot is not the best either. Kyle, you're next. Who is the Rams MVP this season?
Well, if you ask the Rams themselves, and they just, in fact, voted on the team MVP and all the team awards this week, they voted Matthew Stafford as their MVP. But I'm going to say no. I'm going with Kyren Williams for sure here, because Kyren Williams, over this past 5-game winning streak that they've had, has been sensational. He's averaged over 100 yards a game. He's got 5 touchdowns in those games, 1,300 yards on the season. He's been a touchdown machine, 14 on the ground, 2 receiving. And without Kyren Williams running the way he has been behind this rejuvenated and finally healthy offensive line, that is what has sparked this Rams team into the postseason. As you pointed out, Matthew Stafford has not been great over the last 3 games, ever since he went off in beating the Buffalo Bills and putting up 44 points in that game. Matthew Stafford has really struggled over the last 3 games, so I'm happy that the Rams are sitting him this weekend, give him a little bit of rest. But the Rams have still won those 3 games when he has been rather mediocre with only 1 touchdown. So Kyren Williams has been the force. He's been the guy that they need to rely on, and when they've got this running game going, this Rams team is tough to beat. So I'm saying Kyren Williams is the MVP of the LA Rams.
I'll go next. I think the low-hanging fruit for the Seahawks MVP this season is Devin Witherspoon, because he was the only Pro Bowler named this week, and Witherspoon has proved every bit of a playmaker he was expected to be. Mike McDonald is putting him in better positions to affect the game. But I can't give team MVP to a cornerback who did not have a single interception this season. So instead, I'm going to give some love to a guy.
Say Geno Smith.
No, it's not Geno Smith. Absolutely not. Too many red zone interceptions, way too many interceptions in general. A guy who should be a Pro Bowler, though, not just an alternate, and I'm calling him a victim of East Coast bias now that he's hiding up here in the Pacific Northwest. Leonard Williams had a rebirth of a season. He was a monster on the defensive line. He matched a career high in tackles for loss. He had 9 sacks. That was the second most of his career and the best in 5 seasons. And just the third time in his career that he's topped 30 tackles. 4 more tackles on Sunday, and he sets a career high in that category as well. And oh, lest we forget the 92-yard interception return for a touchdown against the Jets, the longest for a defensive lineman in NFL history. Big-time props to Big Cat. You are at my MVP this season. Again, I would say Witherspoon and Ernest Jones IV get honorable mention from me. And Bailey, who was the Niners team MVP this year?
Oh, man, this team has just really lacked consistency all season long, and a lot of that is because of all the injuries that they have suffered. I think, again, the low-hanging fruit, George Kittle and Fred Warner, those guys are the heart and soul of the locker room. They practice what they preach. They go out there every game, give it their all, no matter how old they are, no matter what injuries they may be playing through. Fred Warner playing on a broken ankle really all season long. So those guys are kind of my give it to me obvious MVP choices. I would say the non-obvious MVP choice would be the slew of running backs that the Niners have had. Each of them, you talk about next man up mentality. That's what really every NFL team harps on in the locker room. But that is something that the Niners have really harped on, especially when CMC went down, then Jordan Mason goes down. Feels like they're on their 7th string running back, and it feels like they really haven't skipped a beat. Everybody is kind of ready to go. So I give my MVP to George Kittle and Fred Warner, but honorable mention to the slew of running backs that have been ready and able to come in and fill, not completely fill, but attempt to fill CMC's shoes.
Yeah, still a fantasy football owner's nightmare. Our last topic of the show. What is the biggest what-if moment from your team this season? I'll go first. Again, most people simply say, how did we lose to the Giants? You win that game, and this weekend means something to the Seahawks. But there were 2 points in that Rams game that are absolutely inexcusable. The first is that pick 6 by Cameron Kitchens, 103 yards, completely turned the tide of that game. Some of that is on Geno Smith. Some of that is on offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb for going trips left on the short side of the field, not giving his receivers any space to work with on that side of the field. But the biggest what if was not being able to convert a 3rd and 1 or 4th down and 1 in overtime from the Rams' 16-yard line. Completely inexcusable. And it's a microcosm of the season. The Seahawks running game ranks 30th. Their offensive line has been horrible. And Ryan Grubb's abandonment of the quarterback sneak in the second half of this season is completely baffling to me. If you can't get less than 1 yard on 2 quarterback sneaks, you don't deserve to win the game. He didn't call him on either play. It was an easy call, and they straight up blew it. A chance to end the game with a touchdown right there. They can't get a single yard in 2 plays. Win that game, and we're having a much different conversation today with something to play for in Inglewood on Sunday. Richard, you're next. What was the biggest what-if moment of the Cardinals this season?
Well, I say, what if the Arizona Cardinals didn't... What if they didn't joke when they had a 6-4 record going into the bye week? What if they just played like they had been playing all year long and didn't go 1-7 or whatever to end the year? What if they didn't get swept by Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks? What if they didn't lose to Carolina? What if they just did what I told them to do and win the division? You know, they couldn't do this again if they tried. I still cannot believe that they had that opportunity and let it slip away. If they play the season all over again and you put them in that spot, they win the division. And I'm the one last night laughing. I'm the Kyle of the group, but I'm the one saying, you know, take that. You guys stunk this year. But no, instead I've got egg on my face.
Bailey, the Niners have egg on their face also, but what is the biggest what-if moment for them?
Well, really quick, you say what if, and I just immediately think of my Sun Devils who lost to Texas in a heartbreaker, and what if that targeting call
Way to kick me when I'm down over here.
I can't get past that. Hey, you know, I'm a Sun Devil alum. I went there, so that was a heartbreaker. I'll say it. An exciting game, but a heartbreaker. And right now, it's top of mind. That's what my head goes to when you say what if. But if we get back to the NFL and the Niners, I think the what if is the injuries. What if CMC never goes down? What if Nick Bosa doesn't miss all that time? What if Trent Williams doesn't have the ankle injury? What if Fred Warner doesn't play a whole season basically on a broken ankle? What if Brock Purdy doesn't miss a game? What if Brandon Ayuk doesn't absolutely destroy his knee? What if Deebo Samuel doesn't get pneumonia and has to go to the hospital? Really, the list, I feel like I'm just barely scratching the surface, and I feel like I've named every player on the roster. What if Jordan Mason doesn't go down? And then I think the other thing is, what if Jake Moody, the Niners kicker, makes a few more field goals? They've struggled on special teams all season long. But I think the overarching theme, everything I just said, is what if the Niners were just a little bit healthier? Not even fully healthy, just a little bit healthier.
Absolutely. And we gave them the first word. We give them the last word tonight as well. Kyle, the Rams are division champs, but what is your biggest what if moment of the season?
Well, first of all, since we're giving shout-outs to our colleges, I'm going to say go Orange. Syracuse with the huge win in the Holiday Bowl over Washington State. So we're right on, boys. But I'm going to say my biggest what-if moment goes back early in the season. I think to myself, what if? What if my co-hosts on the Huddle had only listened to me early on in the year when the Seahawks were off to a 3-0 start, and I told them they won't even be in first place by Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they will definitely not win this division? What if Richard had written down in his diary when the Arizona Cardinals got off to that great start, and I told him there's no chance that they were going to win this division? What if Aaron, like I told him back in week 5, when the Rams were 1-4, that they would still win this division? What if he had bet just 1 month's salary on the Rams winning the NFC West? He would be retired right now. And here we are, the Rams, the one team, going to the postseason. And what if you all actually believe that the Rams are going to beat the Lions in round 1 of the playoffs and the Lions will not win a single game? What if? Well, if all that happens, I'll be back in a couple of weeks to have more fun with you right here on the Huddle.
Clearly, you're not betting your salary on that, or you would be retired. And instead, we're all stuck with each other on this great show. A big congratulations again to the Rams for the divisional crown. This was so much fun. We're going to just keep this thing going throughout the playoffs as well. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next week here on the NFC West Huddle.